Foundation of all the knowledge that we use these days. We are forced to discover metallurgy, which is the study of metal. I'm going to talk about it a bit. We are forced to discover astronomy. The writing, which started about 4,000 years ago, started in Africa, and that's why most of the history of Africa were not written. Paper, medicine. The first medicine book was found in Africa. The first university was founded in Africa. The first mechanical machinery that goes to the design of pyramids were also formed in Egypt. However, ladies and gentlemen, one thing I want to say at this stage is to say that it's not only in Egypt that development was happening. Civilization was happening throughout the whole of Africa. And it's very important to point that out, and that's what we'll be looking at. Because many people assume that the only civilization was in Egypt. And then that's why many people assume it's probably the whites that came to Egypt and come and develop it. As we're going to see in this story I'm going to write, this presentation, there are a lot of civilizations in different parts of Africa. It's not only in Egypt. There's Askum, we're going to talk a little bit about Askum, about the Ethiopian, the Great Zimbabwe, the Congo Empire, the Benin Empire, the Akan Empire, the Fulani Empire, the Mali Empire, the Songhai, the Ghana, the Fulani Empire, the Empire of Kanem. All of these civilizations were happening while Egypt was happening. Some of them preceded Egypt. Some of them were after Egypt. Actually, according to history, the Egyptian land their building pyramid from Askum. We're going to go to that in a minute. But what this one is telling us straight away is that civilization is not just limited in African civilization is not just limited in Egypt. There's more of African civilization apart from Egypt. Egypt is the one that many of us are aware of, but in this presentation, I'm going to take you through some of the civilizations that happened even beyond Egypt. Let's look at the Kingdom of Dubai, for example. This flourished in 1059, 169 to 350 BC. And it's what you call the present-day Sudan. It's regarded as the land of great natural wealth for ivory and gold. It was a trading partner and a rival to ancient Egypt. So what you see that most of us are familiar with Egypt, but Egypt learned a lot of what it did from Nubia, which is in Sudan, which is further down. And this is very important, as in my book, I talk a lot about complexion, why complexion varies. Because a lot of people have assumed that it's not the black Africa that were in Egypt. In my book, I explain and break it down in details, historical fact, by Egyptology, and most of the people that the civilization that was around that time, what they say about Egypt, you will know that Egypt was run by black men and black people. Anyway, Sudan, most of the civilization started in Sudan, and most of the pyramids, well, there are more pyramids in Sudan than the whole of Egypt, because the Sudanese people started the idea of the Kingdom of Nubia started the idea of pyramids. And Egypt learned it from them and built it up later, as Greek learned from Egypt and built it up later. In the 18th century, Nubia conquered Egypt and established the codified Egypt dynasty. So not only were they trading partners, the people of Nubia, the people of Sudan at that time, they were so well civilized and their military was so good, they're able to colonize, they're able to conquer Egypt. And they're able to sustain it for more than 100 years. In their country, they built up a fortification that was first of its type. In fact, it was the first military installation that was ever known around the world was built in Sudan. It was supposed to be 15 by 7 by 5 inch thick, and it's covered with white marble. Like I said, it was regarded as the oldest military installation. The idea of mud brick was adopted by Egyptian architects, and they used it to build their walls and buildings to considerable height. So the whole concept of building gigantic pyramid, that concept came from from Sudan, and the Egyptian built on it. So what has been happening in whole civilization is that Africans started it. They passed it to Egypt. Egypt built on it. They passed it to Greek. Greek built on it. Greek passed it to Rome. Rome built on it. Passed it to Europe. And 2,000 years later, the Europeans thought they are the creator of all these ideas, and nothing ever came from Africa. We're going to look into that as we go later. Another kingdom that's very important is the kingdom of Ascom. This was founded 100 AD. That was 2,000 years before. This is in the area of Eritrea, Ethiopia, Yemen, and Sudan. What this is telling us is that it's telling us, if you look at the way I'm beginning the story, I'm bringing us down from Egypt, down to Sudan, down to Ethiopia, so we can see for ourselves that Egypt was just a crescendo of just a crescendo of Africa. It was not the beginning of civilization of Africa. It started somewhere else, and Egypt built on it. It's the seventh oldest continuous inhabited city in Africa. That means this country, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Yemen, they are the oldest place on earth where human being has been living since the creation of human being on this earth. The emperor of Ethiopia was addressed as the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, king of kings. Bible made us to realize that during the Solomonic line of the tribe, that Queen Sheba came to come and see Solomon in his palace. And according to I'm going to read the history in the book of Kings and in the book of Chronicle, it looks like kind of monarchy visiting another monarchy. Like if presidents of the United States come to you to meet a queen in England or King Charles in England. But when you start looking at the book of King of Solomon or Song of Solomon, you realize that it's more than just a monarchy visit. There was a lot of romance that went into it. And I remember one of the quotes that I remember often is that the queen was saying, "Do not blame me because I was dark. I was dark in color. I was a black lady. It's because I stayed long in the sun." However, there was something that happened. There was a relationship that happened, and the Queen Sheba went back and gave birth to a son of Solomon in Ethiopia, and that has maintained the lineage of the King of Solomon up to this. It's the only place where the Solomonic line from the Queen of Sheba have been unbroken up to this day. In fact, many archaeologists believe that the biblical Ark of Covenant is Ark of Covenant that was in the scripture that God gave to the children of Israel, there's a 90% chance that it's going to be anywhere on earth. It's going to be in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia was a trade jam between Europe and Far East. They built an obelisk. This was built in the 4th century. Look at the level of knowledge and technology that went into building this. Don't forget that skyscraper was not built in Western world until it was not built until the 18th century, and this was built in the 4th century. I think the first skyscraper was in Chicago. But yet, in 4th century, they have enough technology to build an obelisk that is 24 meter tall and has 160 and weighs 160 tons, made of granite. This church has been existing. This church has been existing in Ethiopia since the 4th century. It was pulled down by the Italian when they came to attack it, but it has survived. Let's move further down to South Africa, Zimbabwe. The people that belong to are Ashona people from South Africa. They established it in 5th century. The empire covered Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. So you can begin to get a picture here. I started from the top and I'm bringing it down. I'm still going to go to the west. Because it's so important for us to realize the time, 5th century. Once again, I said 5th century, when Julius Caesar came to England, it described England as barbaric, uneducated, and ignorant, and bush people. And that sort of shows that if you look at it, that was less than 1,000 years ago. 5th century, which is about nearly 2,000 years ago. The president of Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique, they've been developing. They become established as a kingdom. They control ivory and gold in the interior of Sub-Saharan Africa. One of the significant construction in Zimbabwe is brick from the 14th century. Zimbabwe people perfected the technique of cutting and shaping stone in such a way that the stone could be stacked in a wall perfectly without using mortar. And that is what is exciting about it. They were able to, if you look at some of the structure that they built, they're able to build a structure that is round and doesn't require mortar to fix it. That means you begin to imagine the level of geometry that went into it. One European archaeologist said that they were much more labor expended in building Zimbabwe walls than in Egypt. It shows just the skill, the creativity, the artistry that went to the construction of the walls. Let's look at all other ones. Now let's move a little bit to West Africa. It's coming back to where I come from, which is West Africa. The oldest civilization in West Africa, 355 BC. Again, look at the date. That was 2,000 years. That was more than 2,000. That's 2,000 years plus 300 years. It's looking at the present day Benin City in Nigeria. Very interesting. Very interesting. Having seen some of these things when we talk in 14th century, when the Portuguese came to Benin, they were astonished at the paradise in the middle of the jungle. And that is very interesting because it was Portuguese in 1445, just before the slave trade. Look at how they called Benin the Great Benin City. Benin City is the first city in Africa that will ever be called a city because of how well it was organized and developed. Benin was, according to Portuguese ship captain Lourenço Pinto in 1691, this is how he described Benin. Before some people started describing that in Africa the wheel live on trees, that was before slave trade. Benin was larger than Lipson, wealthy, industrial, and well governed to the extent that there was no theft. The level of security was such that people had no doors in their houses. That was spoken by Portuguese ship captain Lourenço Pinto in 1691. Another writer, Dutch writer, Alfred Depper, gives this account of Benin City. Benin City is at least 4 miles wide, and the city has wide, straight road, lined by houses. The houses are large and handsome, with walls made from clay. The people are very friendly, and seems to be no stealing. Inside the city is the King's Court. It is large, square, and surrounded by a wall. The court is divided by many palaces, separated environment. That begins to give you how amazed these people were when they came to Benin. They said the king ride on horseback once a year. Benin was one of the first Asian cities to have street light around the city, which wicks fuel by palm oil and illuminated night. That was long before England started having street light. The Benin city has no street light. Not only that, they built a Great Wall, which was built 800 AD to secure and protect the kingdom from invaders. The massive wall and deep ditches surrounding Benin City stretch 16,000 kilometers with 500 settlements. Now, let's put it in perspective. All of us know about China Wall. China Wall is supposed to be 8,851 miles. And for a long time, people used to say it's the only structure that you can see from the moon. It's the only structure the Apollo could see from the moon. But records have shown that Benin City Wall was twice the size of the main Great Wall of China. The Guinness Book of Records in 1974 described Benin City Wall as the largest carried out before the mechanical age. This one was destroyed in 1897 by the English. It's another completely long story. I don't want to go into it because I don't want to be distracted. The way it was destroyed and how it was destroyed was itself one of the ways in which generations have tried to destroy the history of Africa. Now let's put it in context. Imagine that wall existed in Nigeria. A Great Wall of China attracted 24 million people every year and generated about 3 billion in revenue. Now imagine the Wall of Benin, the Great Wall of Benin. I didn't mean the English did not destroy it. If 24 million is coming annually to Nigeria, Benin City, Edo State, to come and look at this wall, and they're generating 3 billion naira in revenue, we will not need to. Who will need oil in Nigeria? Interesting. Another empire I want to discuss, which is also in West Africa, is the Mali Empire. It was founded in 2035 and spanned countries like Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Ivory Coast, the Gambia, and why am I pointing this country out? Because when if I mention this empire, and I don't put the country, you just think this small empire somewhere. Empire is bigger than the whole of the United Kingdom empire. It covers 500,000 square miles with a population of 20 million. We are talking of 1235 years ago. Does that begin to give you how well developed Africa was? The city of Timbuktu, the Mali, was 5 times bigger than London. Just put it in perspective. That city, one city in Mali, in the 14th century, was 5 times bigger than London. It is the wealthiest city in the world and has the richest man in history. You know, a lot of people knows about Jeff Bezos. We all know about Bill Gates of this world. But with all their wealth, none of them match Mansa Musa, who was around in 1331. He's still the wealthiest man in the world with all the $1 million that all these guys have made. Bill Gates and Bezos. They said at that time, Mali produced more than half of the world's supply of salt and gold. This guy Mansa Musa, when he went to pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, history said that when he came back, he took so much gold with him, with about 70 miles of storage, that when he went to Mecca and he came back, the value of gold all over the world was devalued for 10 years. Not only that, he's not only wealthy, he's a very smart guy. He founded the first university in the world. And the library, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, the library of Timbuktu and the famous manuscript of Timbuktu, which cover all the world knowledge at that time. National Geographic recently described Timbuktu as the Paris of the medieval world. It's the Paris of the medieval on account of its intellectual culture. Guys, I'm not talking about Portugal, I'm not talking about Spain, I'm talking about Africa. And what I've done is I've given you different parts area of Africa, so you can begin to see that development was not just in Egypt, was not just in one area of Africa, it was all around Africa. Time will not allow me to tell about the Oyo Empire or the Ashanti Kingdom. Ashanti Kingdom, before the slavery, they fought against the British 4 times. They won 3 times. They won twice. And the only time they win, British deceived them because they broke the treaty. Yeah, thank you very much. Now we're going to proceed to, we've spent time looking at the different empires. We've looked at Egypt Empire. We've looked at Nubia Empire. We've looked at the Ethiopian Empire. We've looked at the Great Zimbabwean Empire. And we also look at Oyo Empire and Benin Empire. Now we're going to go into what are the factors, what were the things invented by this empire to be able to sustain their empire. What are things that made them to stand out, that made them to sustain such a great empire as far back as 3,000 years ago? The first one we're going to look at is metal. We know metal is very important, both for agricultural processes to be able to provide food for your people, and also you need agriculture to be able to create weapons and equipment to be able to not only conquer, but to be able to defend your empire. We saw how Benin was able to build up fortification around their country. They cannot do this without metal. So let's look at metal briefly. One of the things that stand out is the Benin bronze and Oyo bronze. The Benin bronze, which was made of brass and bronze. This is particularly very important because brass and bronze are not just metal that you find in the ground. They are alloy. You can only make them by combining certain kind of metal together to form whatever it is you want to achieve. Something that is durable, that is tensile. Now, we know that from 14th century, the West African Kingdom of Benin and Oyo Empire have been creating bronze. They have guilds and people that specialize in designing this for the king. They use them as decorated plaques, an item of royal regalia, and to show importance of historical record. Earlier I was saying that the British Empire, they destroyed the Kingdom of Benin in 1897. And not only did they destroy, they also loot. From reliable research, there are more than 900 objects in the British Museum that belongs to the Benin, of brands of plaques that belong to the Benin Empire that is lying in the Museum of the British. It just shows that as far back as 14th century, not only have the blacksmith of West Africa have they developed the skill to be able to make iron, but they also be able to make alloy, which is more complex, which require more skills than just metal. Another important thing I want to share about metal is, according to English historian Benjamin Oxman, is the English inventor of steel. But 2,000 years before Benjamin Oxman, the Englishman, the higher people of Tanzania and Africa have invented steel. They did this by molding their own cast with mud, with clay, and they use tuere pipes to blow it into it till it becomes very hot. And when it has successfully reached 1,500 degrees centigrade, they throw grass swamp to serve as carbon that will smelt the iron into steel. And so 2,000 years before Huntsman even came to the surface of the earth, the people of Maya have been creating steel, which they used to form all their metal equipment for weapons of war and for the agricultural tools. Now, one of the challenges with African invention is that it's very easy for people to copy this. Recently, the people in Czechoslovakia, they reenact the iron smelting method, and they discovered that they were able to reach 1,500 degrees centigrade, and they were able to produce steel from that metal. That shows how much intellectually endowed are people from Africa, from iron during this period. Let's move to calendar. If I ask anybody where the origin of calendar, many people will say that calendar is from Rome. It's definitely a Roman invention. And I would not be surprised, because when you look at some of the months in the calendar, like July, which was Julius Caesar, 7th month, and August, which was Emperor Augustus, one of the two Roman emperors in Rome, you automatically assume that if they can name it after themselves. And when you look at Sept, Oct, Nov, and Decem, which are 7, 8, 9 in Latin, you automatically assume that it must be the Roman. But it cannot be more wrong. This current solar energy was invented in Egypt for agricultural purposes. It was not invented for battle. It was not through astronomy. It was invented for agricultural purposes. Why? Because if you know your geography very well, you will know that Egypt is located in a desert. It's a desert land. But every July, every year, the river Nile will flood and will bring nutrients from different areas and dump and flood the whole land of Egypt. And it was during this period that the Egyptians are able to grow their crop, because not only does it bring water, it brings nutrients with it. So Egyptians realized that for them to be able to feed the millions of people in their population, they need to be able to get precisely when this is going to happen, so that the farmers are ready to take advantage of this period. So to do this, the Egyptians realized that the sun revolved through observation, without any equipment. Through observation, they realized that it takes 24 hours for the sun to revolve around the sun. And they know that every 360 days after that, the flooding always happens every 360 days. That is 360 of that 24 hours. Flooding always happens. So that's how they were able to monitor. So they created a calendar of 12 calendar months with 30 days in between. So we have 360 days calendar created by the Egyptian, not by the astrologers, not by the scientists, but by the farmers, because they want to have a good idea of when the flooding is going to happen, so that they can stop building the pyramids, and the farmer can be prepared to be able to take advantage of the flooding of the land. And that's how the calendar was created. We know calendar is very important in our days. It informs us of the date and future events. It helps to prioritize and it helps to increase productivity. And that's how ancient Egyptians were able to use great calendars to be able to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of their farming. Now, later on the Romans picked this up and they called the name calendar, called from calling the beginning of the year. The calendar is Latin name calling the beginning of the year. And the name July and August, the name of July and August and September, October, according to Latin. But originally, it's the ancient Egyptian that created the calendar, not the Romans, or the Greek. Astronomy. Now, if you notice, I'm moving to Libya. I'm going to talk a little bit about a guy called Eratosthenes. This guy was born in 276 BC in Libya, in North Africa. This is not in Egypt, he was born in Libya. This guy is a very smart guy. He's mathematically endowed to the level that he was able to calculate the earth circumference to be 40 kilometers by comparing two locations to the Sunday. The story says that he knew that there's a well in Aswan called Well of Djenné, and he knows that at a certain time of the year, the sun will go through the well and goes to the bottom of the water without touching the wall. So this guy went 800 kilometers away and put another pole, and he measured how long it takes the sun to move from the pole to the well of Aswan, and that was how he was able to calculate the circumference, the circumference of the whole world, which is 40 kilometers. Now it's very easy. We might think it's not something special because we have satellite, we have plane, we have Concorde, we have rocket that is jetting around the world, we have satellite going around the world, so we know the technology. But this guy was able to, using 2 dimensions, he was able to calculate the distance of the circumference of the earth. Not only did he do that, he was able to calculate the distance between the earth and the moon, and the distance between the earth and the sun. He was one that invented longitude and latitude. Longitude and latitude, you might not know it because you have your sat nav. But if 200 years ago, if you want to move from UK to Ghana, you will need to chart using longitude and latitude. I know many of us, when we look at the map of the world, we see Africa to be very small, almost the same size as Greenland. But the reality is that Greenland is only the size of one country, the Republic of Congo in Africa. There's the reason why the map of the world was done like that. It was done to be able to accommodate the longitude and the latitude that this Eratosthenes did, so that the sailor can navigate the whole world. This guy's invention made it possible for people to be able to navigate the sea and go from places to places and be able to travel. Even during the slave trade, when they are using the triangle, they are able to navigate and take slaves to Africa, using from Africa to America, using the longitude and the latitude. Not only that, the guy created what he called sieve of Eratosthenes. But above all, this guy discovered what he called algorithm. Algorithm is a fundamental principle underlying structured step-by-step instruction to solve a problem and to carry out a task. What the principle that he invented is what is used in computer. That when you send a message, when you send a task for your computer, it doesn't go and do the task. It follows a step-by-step process. It was this guy called Eratosthenes that created the algorithm that was later transferred into computer. The logic was eventually transferred into computer and all of the electronic material that we see around the world. So next time when you switch your computer on, or when you switch your smartphone on, remember Eratosthenes from Libya. Mathematics. Mathematics is another invention of Africa. Actually, from the time when women were hunter-gatherers in Africa, their geometry has to be good, because for you to be able to track the steps, of tiger, leopard on the floor, you need to have a very good knowledge of geometry. You need to know geometry. Basically is the study of shape and relative arrangement of the part of something. So if you are hunter-gatherer, you'll be able to look at this footstep and know that, wow, this is a big animal that part this place. It's probably going to be a lion.